Hello everyone. In this discussion, we'll talk about the basic differences between fixed effect and random effect modeling. So we have already discussed some examples of how to compute summary effect in fixed effect modeling in one of the previous videos that I've made. But in this video, I want to re-emphasize the basic differences between fixed and random effect modeling, how we interpret the summary effect of fixed and random effect modeling, as well as what are some of the basic differences between them. So to go through fixed effect modeling just once more, we have discussed in previous video that in fixed effect modeling the basic idea is that the the true effect is actually common, or it's actually fixed or same in all the studies. So as you can see, there are 3 studies in this meta-analysis, and the assumption is that the true underlying effect is actually same for all the studies, and hence the true summary effect will also be same. In this case, it's 0.6, right? And whatever variation we see in the observed effect of these studies, study 1, 2 or 3, that is due to simply sampling error. So you can see these are the true effects which have been represented by this theta. This is the true effect of all the studies, and it is same for all the studies, right? For 1, 2 and 3, all 3 studies, the true effect is actually same, it's theta. But you will notice in study 1 the observed effect is y1, in study 2 the observed effect is y2, and in study 3 the observed effect is y3. So why these y's are different from theta? It's because of this epsilon 1, epsilon 2, epsilon 3, which are nothing but the sampling error in these 3 studies, which will depend on the sample size of the study, of course. So because these 3 observed effects, y1, y2 and y3, they deviate from the true effect theta, that is why the observed summary effect will also be somewhat different from the true summary effect. So the true summary effect will be nothing but theta only in this case, since all the studies have theta true effect, so the summary effect will also be theta, whereas the observed summary effect will be slightly more or less than theta because of the sampling error. So whatever differences you see between the observed effect and the true effect in fixed modeling, that is purely due to sampling error, right? So this can also be represented through this equation. You can see this is the observed effect of the study. This is equals to the true effect of the study plus minus epsilon, and epsilon is the sampling error of the study. And we can also make a distribution of the sampling error or sampling distribution of these 3 studies. You can see that for study 1, for example, because the sample size of the study is quite less, the width of the sampling distribution is more, right? And because the width of the sampling distribution is more, epsilon, which is the sampling error in this study 1, it is high, right? But in study 2, you can see because the sample size must have been more in this study, that is why the width of the sampling distribution is less. And because the width of the sampling distribution is less, you can see the epsilon, which is the sampling error, this is also less. Similarly, for study 3, you will see that the sample size is somewhere in between study 1 and 2. So the width is also somewhere in between study and 1 and 2 of the sampling distribution, and the sampling error is also in between. So basically what I want to say is the sampling error depends on the sample size of the individual study. In hypothetically speaking, if the sample size of the study approaches infinity, then the sampling error would amount to 0, and the observed effect of the study will exactly be the same as the true effect of the study, right? Because this will amount to 0 if the sample size is infinity. So the observed effect of the study will approximate the true effect of the study, right? So as sample size increases, the within study variance, so within study variance we will denote in future by Vy. This within study variance depends on the sample size of the study. So as sample size increases, within study variance will decrease, and sampling error also, which is being denoted by epsilon here in diagrams, that will decrease. And hypothetically speaking, if the sample size becomes infinity, then this epsilon or the sampling error will become 0, and the observed effect of the study will approximate the true effect of the study. So that is the basic concept in fixed effect modeling. And I'll talk about how random effect modeling is analogous to this concept. Like I'll explain the differences, but right now I'll not talk about the computing the weight of the fixed effect modeling that we'll discuss later. What are the differences? Because of these assumptions, the calculation of the weights of the study is also different between fixed and random effect modeling. I'll come back to that later. So now let's talk about the assumptions in random effect modeling. So in random effect modeling, so in random effect modeling, the difference is that the assumption of the distribution of the study effects is different. So see, many times when we are doing a systematic review or meta-analysis, we are collecting a group of studies from literature, and these studies are very different in their study design, or some of the variables in the study may be quite different, right? So this assumption that these studies, they have a same effect size, that is implausible in those cases. Okay, so generally there is no reason to assume that these studies are identical, and that's in the sense that the true effect size is exactly the same in all the studies. So in these cases, when there is when we are doing a meta-analysis of studies which are maybe done in different ethnic groups, or maybe the dose of the drug is different, or the dosing regimen is different, basically the study designs or the population are different, or the variables which may affect the outcome of the study, they are different across the studies, we cannot assume that the true effect size will remain same across all the studies, right? So one example that this book gives is, for example, a vaccine study. Let's say we are doing a study which compares vaccinated group versus placebo, and you are computing maybe risk ratio or whatever, right? So you would assume that the risk ratio may be similar across all the studies, but it may not be exactly identical. For example, in some studies the participants may be a bit older, or in some studies participants may be more educated, or in some studies participants, the baseline risk factors may be different, or some studies participants may be healthier than other studies, or the intervention may be even given differently in these studies, right? So based on these variables, the outcome may be slightly bit different in these studies. So you don't have a reason to believe that the effect size will be common and same for all these studies, right? So because these studies, they differ in the mixes of the participant and in the implementation of intervention, you may expect different effect size across different studies, and that is the primary reason for implementing random effect modeling, right? And another example that this book gives is the impact of educational intervention. So let's say you are doing a meta-analysis to see the impact of educational intervention. Again, you have a reason to believe that the impact may be different across different studies, because different studies may have different population, like different ethnic group, different children, different class size, different age group. So the factors, we may not even be aware of these factors or covariates. It's not necessary that we are always aware of these factors, but logic dictates that these factors can exist, and these factors can cause variation in the magnitude of the effect across studies. So that is the primary reason to implement random effect modeling. So in random effect modeling, the assumption is not that there is a common true effect, like we denoted theta for fixed effect modeling, that was the common true effect across all the studies. But in random effect modeling, we don't assume that there is one common true effect or theta. We assume that there are so many different there is a spectrum of true effects across all the studies, like for example theta 1 to theta 10, maybe if there are 10 studies, then there is a spectrum of true effect, and the goal of random effect modeling is not to find the common true effect, because there is no common true effect. The goal is to find the mean of these common true effects. Okay, so in random effect meta-analysis, we assume that the true effects are normally distributed. They exist almost in the form of a Gaussian distribution, and the goal is not to find the common true effect, it is rather to find the mean of the true effects of the studies. So I'll show you in a diagram. See, this is the assumption in random effect modeling that the true effects, there is no one common true effect like theta, which we denoted in fixed effect modeling. Here we have a range of true effects, okay, and this exists this exists as a Gaussian distribution. So the true effects are actually randomly distributed. In some studies the true effect may be different, and in some studies the true effect may be different. So that is the first difference. The most important difference between fixed and random effect modeling is the assumption of the distribution of the true effect. So in fixed effect modeling, the assumption is that the true effect is same across all the studies, which is what we denoted with theta. But in random effect modeling, the assumption is that the true effect actually changes across all the studies because of changes in whatever variables which may influence the outcome. Okay, these variables could be anything, as I've told you, age group, dosing of intervention, or it could be anything under the sun. So these factors which the variables, the covariates which influence the outcome, they are different across the studies, because of which the true effect itself varies across the studies. So true effect is different across all the studies. So there is no such thing as theta, rather we can have theta 1, theta 2, theta 3 and so on. We can go on to denote the true effects of the studies like this. Okay, so this is diagram denoting so this is the true effect. Okay, this is the true effect across all the studies, and these are the 3 studies that we are doing. You can that we are doing our random effect modeling on. Now you can see that the true effect of study 1 is, let's denote it with theta 1. The true effect of study 2 will denote it with theta 2, and the true effect of study 3 will denote by theta 3. So as you can see, the true effect itself is changing from study 1 to study 3. Unlike in true effect modeling, it was theta, theta, theta. Here it is theta 1, theta 2, theta 3. So it is changing across the studies. And why these thetas are not the same as and what is this? This is the mu, or that is the mean of the thetas, or the mean of the distribution of the true effects. So why is there the difference between theta and mu? We'll from now onwards will denote with zeta. Okay, so zeta is the difference between the mean of the true effects, distribution of true effects, and the actual true effect of the study, right? So that is one thing, zeta. That is the difference, that is the true variation actually. So that true variation is the difference between the true effect of the study and the mean of the true effects of the study. So that is zeta. Then there is another variation which is the same as was in true effect modeling, which is the epsilon. So you can see that even though this is the true effect of the study 1, we'll not get this true effect when we compute the effects. We'll actually get what we call the observed effect, which we are denoting with a square again. So why is there a difference between the observed effect of study 1 and the true effect of study 1? That is again because of the sampling error, and that we are going to denote again with epsilon. Okay, so again to summarize, the difference between the observed, in together I want to say that there is a difference between again the mean of the true effects, mean of the distribution of the true effects, and the observed effect. This is the observed effect, which is denoted by square, right? So this difference, this in random effect modeling, it is attributed to two variables. First variable is the zeta, which is the true difference, so the true variation because in random effect modeling the assumption is that the true effects are themselves changing, right? So that is being denoted by zeta. You can also call this between study variance. We'll come back to this later. So between study variance also denoted by tau square in this book. So tau square is the difference between the mean of the distribution of effects and the true effect of individual study, right? That is because that is attributed to between study variance. Whereas then there is one more variation is there, which is the difference between the true effect of the study and the observed effect of the study, and that difference is denoted by epsilon, which is nothing but the sampling error, which may amount to 0 when the sample size of the study is infinity. Same concept as it was in fixed effect modeling, right? And remember that this tau square or between study variance, it will amount to 0 when the number of studies is infinity. Okay, I'll come back to this concept later. So you can see again that this is the grand mean of the distribution of true effects, or I can call this mu, right? and this mu, there is a difference between mu and theta 1 or theta 2 or theta 3, whatever theta n, and this difference is due to zeta. Zeta is the this is the true variation. This is because of this is nothing but between study variance, right? And then there is a difference between the true effect of the study and the observed effect of the study here, and this difference is again due to sampling error denoted by epsilon. So that is the concept of random effect modeling. So to denote this concept again in the form of an equation, you can say that the observed effect of the study, or the y, is equal to the mean of the distribution of the true effects plus zeta, this is zeta, plus epsilon, right? I hope this makes sense. Y, which is observed effect, will be equal to mu plus zeta plus epsilon. So it is equal to the grand mean of the distribution plus zeta, which is between study variance, due to between study variance, and epsilon, which is due to sampling error. So now that we understand the basic difference between fixed and random effect modeling, I can explain to you the only difference which we need to know between these two types of modelings when it comes to computing the summary effect. So the only real difference that you need to remember between these modelings is that, because just remember, in fixed effect modeling, the only variance that is important is the within study variance, right? That is due to sampling error, right? And we know that this variance would amount to 0 when the sample size of the study will approach infinity, right? So in fixed effect modeling, the only variance that is important is within study variance, right? But in random effect modeling, within study variance is important, of course, because there will be sampling error, right? There will be sampling error, and within study variance is important, but we also need to account for, in case of random effect modeling, between study variance, which will denote by tau square. Okay, so this tau square is the between study variance. This is also computed in total variance in random effect modeling, and because we know that the weight of study is nothing but, in case of meta-analysis, it is the inverse of variance. So in fixed effect modeling, the weights will be different. The distribution of weight may be different as compared to random effect modeling, because in random effect modeling, when we calculate variance, we will also take into account the tau square, which is between study variance. So basically in fixed effect modeling, what we need is within study variance, but in random effect modeling, we need to account for within study variance as well as between study variance, which is tau square. Okay. Now, of course, this makes sense that the tau square will actually be same across all the studies, right? Because tau square is nothing but the variance of this normal distribution curve, right? This is the normal distribution curve of, this is the distribution curve of true effects. So the variance of this is tau square. This is the variance in the between study variance, right? So this tau square will be same for all the studies, whereas you can understand that within study variance, which is Vy, as in fixed effect modeling, it will be different from study 1 to study 2 because of differences in sample size. So Vy will be different for each study, within study variance will be different for each study, whereas between study variance, that is tau square, it will be same for all the studies. And we'll see this when we'll see the examples of random effect modeling, when we'll do the calculations. So another diagram depicting exactly the same concept, you can see this is the distribution of the true effects, right? This is the distribution of the true effects, and you can see this is the mean of that distribution. So this is, let's say, study 1, and this is the true effect of the study 1, and the difference between the true effect of the study 1 and the mean of the distribution of true effects is zeta, and this zeta depends on the variance of the between study variance, that is tau square, and tau square will be similar for all the studies. Then the difference, there is also a difference between the true effect of study 1 and the observed effect of the study 1, that is y, and this difference is due to epsilon, which is denoted by epsilon. Epsilon is nothing but the sampling error, right? So this depends on within study variance, or Vy. So you can see that y is equal to theta plus epsilon, right? theta plus epsilon, that is y. And what is theta? Theta is grand mean plus zeta, right? So altogether I get that the observed effect is grand mean plus zeta plus epsilon. We know that zeta depends on between study variance, which is same for all the studies, and epsilon depends on within study variance, which will be different from study to study. So zeta depends on the variance, which is tau square, or you can say standard deviation will be tau, which is the between study variance, right, of distribution of true effects, and it will be same for all the studies, whereas epsilon will depend on the variance and standard distribution of sampling error. So this will be different for each study because each study will have a different sample size. So now that you understand that in fixed effect modeling the only important variance is the within study variance, but in random effect modeling we need to account for within study variance as well as between study variance. So that is how the only difference between fixed and random effect modeling for our purpose right now, most important difference, sorry, is that in fixed effect modeling the weight will be 1 by within study variance, right? That will be the weight for fixed effect modeling, and we have seen examples of this before. But in case of random effect modeling, you can see the formula of the weight for each individual study will be the reciprocal of total variance, and total variance will be within study variance as well as tau square, which is between study variance. So this is the main difference between fixed and random effect modeling. The weight for fixed effect modeling is the inverse of within study variance, but the weight in random effect modeling is the inverse of summation of within study variance as well as between study variance. So now that you understand some basic differences, we are going to go into some more differences between fixed and random effect modeling. So the first difference, as I have talked about in previous discussions also, is that the interpretation of the summary effect changes when we talk about fixed and random effect modeling. Because in fixed effect modeling the assumption was that the true effect is same across all the studies, that is theta. So the summary effect that we generate, this is an estimate of this common effect. So the summary effect that we are generating, let's call it x or m, let's call it m. So the summary effect or the weighted mean, this is estimate of theta. Okay, this m is an estimate of theta in case of true effect modeling. But in case of random effect modeling, we don't assume that there is a common true effect. We assume that the true effect is itself distributed along a Gaussian distribution or normal distribution. So that is why the summary effect or m, it is not an estimate of theta, but it is an estimate of mu, or mu is the mean of the summary effects. Okay, so because we assume that the true effect is varying from one study to another study, the weighted mean or the summary effect that you generate, it is an estimate of the mean of these effects. So just remember, in fixed effect modeling, the summary effect is the mean of the, it is the estimate of the true effect or theta. But in case of random effect modeling, the summary effect is the estimate of the mean or mu of thetas, whatever thetas, theta 1 to theta n. So it is mu of true effects, mean of true effects, grand mean of true effects. Another difference is, this is quite important, is the relative importance of studies changes when we go from fixed to random effect modeling. So see, it makes sense that because in fixed effect modeling our assumption was that the only variation that is important is the within study variation, and that the variance is actually dependent on the sample size of the study, right? So it makes sense that when we are doing fixed effect modeling, it is the larger studies that should be more important than smaller studies, right? Because we know that in larger studies, because sample size is more, so Vy will be less, right? And in smaller studies, because sample size is less, Vy will be more, within study variance will be more. Okay, so in fixed effect modeling, it makes sense that the weights assigned to the studies should be more for larger studies, much more for larger studies than for smaller studies, because larger studies are more important than smaller studies in fixed effect modeling, because larger studies are giving a more precise estimate of the true effect size than smaller studies. So in fixed effect modeling, when we are assigning weights, we can largely ignore the information in smaller studies, since we have better information about the same effect size from the larger studies. And this is reflected when I'll show you the distribution of weights in fixed versus random effect modeling. You will see that in fixed effect modeling, more weights are given, relatively you have a huge chunk chunk of the weight going to the larger studies, and smaller studies, they don't have much weight in fixed effect modeling. And it makes sense because, as I just told you, in fixed effect modeling, larger studies will give a more precise estimate than smaller studies, right, of the true effect. But in random effect modeling, the thing is that in random effect modeling, we have to account for not only within study variance but also between study variance, right? And we know the assumption is that there is no common true effect, but rather the true effects themselves are distributed. So in case of random effect modeling, even smaller studies, they provide some important information, right? Because in random effect modeling, you know that the true effects are actually distributed. So even if a study is small, it is giving an important information about the mean of the effect size. I hope this makes sense. So since the goal is not to estimate one true effect, but to estimate the mean of these effects, and if you want to estimate that mean more precisely, you need each the smaller studies, they also become important because they provide an important information which larger studies may not be providing, right? So since each study provides information about a different effect size, we want to be sure that all the effect size are represented in the summary effect. So in case of random effect modeling, smaller studies, they become relatively more important as compared to fixed effect modeling. Okay, so it means that we cannot just discount a small study by giving it very small weight in the way that you were giving in fixed effect modeling. Okay, so the estimate provided by that study may be imprecise. Of course, the sampling error is always there. It is true that even in case of random effect modeling, we expect that smaller studies will be less precise than larger studies. But still, relatively speaking, as compared to fixed effect modeling, the smaller studies are still important in random effect modeling as compared to fixed effect modeling. Okay, but the information that the smaller study provides is not provided by any other study. So we cannot give too much weight to very large study, and we cannot give too less weight to a small study in case of random effect modeling. Okay, so the consequence of this is that in fixed effect modeling, the range of effect is quite wide. Like you will see, I'll show you directly. See, this is fixed effect modeling and this is random effect modeling. Now you can see that the DONET is the largest study, right? The study with the largest weight in this random effect modeling, and PEC is the study with the smallest weight. So it is 23 and 13. But when I do fixed effect modeling, you will see that the weight of the largest study is actually 39% and the weight of the smallest study is 8%. So you can see that as I told you, larger studies are much more important than smaller studies in case of fixed effect modeling. So there the range of the weight is quite huge. The smallest study is 8 and largest study is 39, right? So larger studies are given much more importance as compared to smaller studies in fixed effect modeling. But you will see in random effect modeling, the largest study weight is 23 and smallest study weight is 13. So this range of weight, you will see here it was 8 to 39, now it is 13 to 23. So the weight assigned to the smallest study has increased and the weight assigned to the largest study has decreased. So the range itself is narrow in random effect modeling, because yes, it is still true that larger studies are more important than smaller studies, but the relative importance has changed. Smaller studies have become more important and larger studies have become less important as compared to fixed effect modeling. Okay, so under the fixed effect modeling, the range of the weights is wide, whereas in case of random effect modeling, the weights fall in a relatively narrow range. So this is the summary that I want you to remember. Larger studies are more important than smaller studies due to less sampling error. So larger studies are much more important than smaller studies in fixed effect modeling. But in random effect modeling, smaller studies, they are also contributing to some important information. So the relative importance of larger and smaller studies, they change in random effect modeling, and the range of the weights, it becomes narrow in case of random effect modeling. So I hope this makes sense. This is what I have shown here, that the weights is the weight in case of fixed effect modeling is the inverse of the within study variance. But in case of a random effect modeling, it is inverse of within study variance as well as between study variance. And it is due to simply this formula only that the distribution of weights has changed so much. It has become more balanced, because for every weight you will compute this, you will put this number for a weight, calculating weight of each of these studies, right? So because of this number, the t square, the between study variance, the weights, they will look more balanced in case of random effect modeling. Okay, so that this w is the weight, vy is within study variance, and tau square is between study variance. So because of this formula, simply speaking, the weights, they look more balanced in case of random effect modeling. Okay. Similarly, this concept is very similar to what I just explained. Let's say you have an extreme study. So what do you mean by extreme study? Extreme study means a study which has a relatively extreme effect size. Okay, so for example, what is the most extreme study in this case? I can see these are the standardized differences, or Hedges G. So you can see the most extreme effect size is this study, Donut, right? And the least extreme study would be this, right? So extreme basically means most influential, most dramatic effect size that you see. That is the meaning of extreme. Okay, so the relative importance of extreme study will also similarly change in fixed and random effect modeling. You can understand that in fixed effect modeling, let's say we have an extreme study, it has a very extreme effect size, and it also has large weight. So that becomes hugely important, because not only the study is having a large sample size, it is having an extreme effect size also. So it will pull the summary effect towards it. So the importance of this study is much higher. And let's say we have a small study, and this small study is also having some extreme effect size, but because it is a small study, unfortunately it will not have that much important in fixed effect modeling. But when we go to random effect model, when we convert this into a random effect model, what will happen is that those studies which are extreme and they have large sample size, they will become relatively less important. As I told you, the weights, they become more balanced as we go from fixed to random effect modeling. So its relative importance will actually decrease relatively as compared to fixed effect modeling, right? For example, in the previous diagram I showed you, the relative weight of Donut was decreasing from 39 to 23, and you can see Donut is an extreme study also because it has a very large effect size. But because the relative importance of Donut is decreasing as we go from fixed to random effect modeling, so it will the pull it had on the summary effect will decrease. And you can see the small, if there was any small study with extreme effect size, then the importance of that will increase because the weights will become more balanced. The weight will increase as we go to random effect modeling. So the relative importance of extreme study with small sample size will relatively increase. And this is very obvious in this example, in this forest plot. If you see Donut study, it was the most extreme study, right? And you can see that in the Donut, because it was a very extreme study, it had a huge effect size and the weight was also more, so it was pulling the summary effect towards it. You can see summary effect is quite close to the Donut study, right? But when you go to random effect modeling, you see that the relative weight of the Donut has decreased, and because of this, Donut is not pulling the summary effect towards it anymore, and the summary effect has somewhat decreased. So the influence of the Donut study, it has decreased. Whereas if you will see the importance of Carroll is the study which has the least standardized difference. So the importance of Carroll study has increased. You'll see from 12% it has increased to 16%. So because the relative importance of Carroll study has increased, the weight is now moving towards the Carroll study. So I hope this makes sense. Carroll is the study which has a towards one end of the spectrum it has an effect size, and Donut has effect size towards another end of spectrum. So in the case of fixed effect modeling, the Donut was more influential than Carroll, right? But in case of random effect modeling, now the relative importance of Donut has decreased and the relative importance of Carroll has increased. So because of which the summary effect is being pulled towards the Carroll study. That is the way to understand this concept. Now, so we have talked about two differences. First is the how you compute the weights. This changes. The relative importance of large and small studies change as we go from fixed to random effect modeling. Like the weights, they become more balanced, right? Now, third difference is the confidence interval of the summary effect. So you see, you know that the confidence interval of the summary effect, it depends on the total variance, and you know that in fixed effect modeling the variance that is important is the within study variance, but in random effect modeling we also need to account for between study variance, right? So because there is more variance in random effect modeling, the confidence interval or the variance or the standard error of the summary effect will also be larger in random effect modeling. So you can see in this example they have shown some 4 hypothetical studies which have an infinite sample size. Since all these 4 studies they have an infinite sample size, you would expect that the confidence interval is almost 0. Can you see the confidence interval is almost approaching 0? Why? Because they are infinite sample size studies. Okay, so this is just a hypothetical concept, but you can see that the confidence intervals of each of these studies is 0 because they have an infinite sample size. This is fixed effect modeling, and the summary effect will also have a confidence interval of 0 because it is nothing but the estimate of the common effect of all the studies, right? So the standard error of the summary effect is 0. But see, in random effect modeling, even though you have all the same 4 studies and all these 4 studies, they still have infinite sample size, but the confidence interval or the standard error of the summary effect is not 0, it is still very wide, right? So this is the difference. In random effect modeling, the confidence interval of the variance or the variance of the summary effect is wider as compared to fixed effect modeling. Why? Because in case of random effect modeling, we are not just accounting for the within study variance, we are also accounting for between study variance. And yes, we can minimize within study variance by increasing the sample size to infinity, but to minimize this between study variance, the number of studies itself has to be infinity, which is not possible, which is not there in this case. Okay, so see, standard error of the summary effect is 0 here because each study has an infinite sample size, which means Vy will approximate 0. But in random effect modeling, the standard error of the summary effect is still non-zero because the standard because it depends on not only within study variance but also between study variance, and between study variance will only be 0 when the number of studies approaches infinity. Okay, within study variance will be 0 when the sample size of the study approaches infinity, but between study variance will only be 0 when the number of studies itself approaches infinity. So the variance standard error 95% confidence interval of the summary effect is larger for random effect modeling. So this is another difference between fixed and random effect modeling, that confidence intervals are actually wider in random effect modeling. So I've written the same thing here. The standard of the summary effect, it approaches 0 in case of fixed effect modeling as the sample size approaches infinity. But for random effect modeling, the standard error of the summary effect will not only depend on the sample size of the individual study but also on the number of studies. This is very important, and this also constitutes a problem. Sometimes we have to do random effect modeling and we don't have enough number of studies, and in that case the tau square is big, right? And I'll come back to this problem later on, but what I want you to know is in random effect modeling, number of studies is also important. In fixed effect modeling, most important is the sample size of the study, and the variance will approximate 0 when the sample size approaches infinity. But in random effect modeling, variance is also dependent on the number of studies because tau square will only approach 0 when the number of studies is infinity. So in case of random effect modeling, the standard error of the summary effect will approach 0 only when the sample size and the number of studies approach infinity. And if you want to see this this concept through a formula, I can show you. So let's assume we are doing a meta-analysis and we have, let's say, k number of studies, right? Maybe 2, 3, I'm denoting it with k, and each study has a sample size of n, and each study has the same standard deviation, which is denoted by the sigma. Okay, so you know what will be the standard error of each study. It will be standard deviation by under root of n, sample size. So the variance of each study will be, within study variance will be, it is standard error ka square, so it will be sigma square by n, right? This is the Vy, or within study variance of one study. Now let's calculate the weight of for one study if we are doing a fixed effect modeling versus the weight of one study when we are doing a random effect modeling. So it's pretty straightforward. You know, in fixed effect modeling the weight is the inverse of within study variance, so it will be 1 divided by Vy, so it will be basically n by sigma square. So this is the weight of one study when you are doing a fixed effect modeling. And now you want to calculate the weight of the summary effect. So you know that the weight of the summary effect in case of fixed effect modeling, or in case of any modeling actually, it is the weight, the variance of the summary effect, it is reciprocal of the summary of the weights, right? So since each study has a weight of n by sigma square, what will be the weight of case studies? You know, the number of studies is k, so the weight of case studies will be k into n by sigma square. This will be the weight, total weight of all the studies. And now to calculate the variance of the summary effect, you just have to do the reciprocal of this, so it will come out to be sigma square divided by k by n. So this basically, just remember this final thing we have calculated. This is the sigma square by kn. This is the variance of the summary effect in fixed effect modeling, right? Now you have to calculate, so this is the variance and this will be the standard error, of course. Okay, that is for fixed effect modeling. Now for random effect modeling, you know, for random effect modeling the weight of one study is the reciprocal of total variance, and total variance is within study variance plus tau square. So I will write here like this: the weight in random effect modeling, it is 1 by sigma square n plus tau square, because we know that Vy was sigma square by n, right? So this is the weight of one study. So what will be the weight of k studies? It will be this multiplied by k, right? It will be this multiplied by k. And what will be the weight of the summary effect? It will be just inverse of this. So you know, the weight of the summary effect will be just reciprocal of the summation of weights of all the studies, and this is k into this weight of one study. So the summary, the standard error of the summary effect will come out to be this. You can calculate if you want. This will be sigma square by kn plus tau square by k. So you can see the formulas are exactly same. The first term in both the formulas is exactly the same for both true if fixed effect modeling as well as random effect modeling. The first part in the standard error of the summary effect, this is same. This is sigma square by kn, but in case of random effect modeling you also have tau square by k. Okay, so now you just see, if you want to make this 0, if this n was infinity, means the sample size of one study was infinity, then this would become 0, right? So this is what I have told you already, that in fixed effect modeling, if you want to have the summary effect with 0 standard error, you don't want to have any standard error, the standard error has to be 0, then the sample size for each study has to be infinity, right? But in case of random effect modeling, obviously if you want to make the first term 0, you can either make this by having infinite number of studies or infinite sample size. But even if you have infinite sample size, this term becomes 0, this second part will still be there. So standard error will still be non-zero even if you have an infinite sample size in each study. The standard error for random effect modeling will still be non-zero. So this is what this forest plot was trying to show you. See, in this case the sample size for each study was infinity, so the standard error of the summary effect was approaching 0. Right, standard error of the summary effect was approaching 0. Why? In fixed effect modeling, because the sample size for each study was infinity. But even but in case of random effect modeling, even if the studies they have an infinite sample size, the standard error is of the summary effect is not approaching 0. Why it is not approaching 0? Because the second part of that equation is still there, right? That is tau square by k, that is still there, and this does not depend on the sample size. You can see the second term depends on k, actually it depends on number of studies. So if you want to make the second part 0, the k has to be infinity, means the number of studies also has to be infinity. So if you want to have a 0 standard error in case of random effect modeling, in this case I have to have infinite number of studies, then only the standard error can be 0. So this is the reason why in case of random effect modeling, the standard error of the summary effect is still it is wider as compared to fixed effect modeling, because it is comprised not only of the first part of the equation, but it also has a second part in the equation, which is the tau square by k, right? So this is just a theoretical concept, but you understand that the summary effect will have a wider confidence interval. That is the practical implication that I want you to remember, that in random effect modeling, the summary effect will have a wider confidence interval or a wider standard error as compared to fixed effect modeling. Okay, that is the main difference. Now, what is another difference between fixed and random effect modeling? That is the null hypothesis. So we know that when we constitute the summary effect, we also calculate Z statistic, and we calculate a one-tailed or two-tailed p-value when we do meta-analysis. So what the null hypothesis is different because the definition of the summary effect is different. So the null hypothesis is also different for fixed and random effect modeling. For fixed effect modeling, the null hypothesis will be that the true summary effect is 0. The theta is 0, okay, but for random effect modeling, the null hypothesis is that the mean of the true effects or the mu is 0, and this is simply because the summary effect itself is different. The interpretation of summary effect is itself different in the two types of modeling. So under fixed effect modeling, null hypothesis being tested is that there is 0 effect in every study, means the true summary effect is 0. But under random effect modeling, the null hypothesis is that the mean effect or the mu is 0, okay. Then we come to a very important question: which model should we use? So the decision on which model to use should be dependent on what is the goal of the study and what are your expectations regarding the distribution of effect size across the studies that you have collected through systematic review. So in fixed effect modeling, you just remember two things. You have to look first at the distribution of the effect size across all the studies. If you have a reason to believe that all the studies that you have collected in your meta-analysis, they're identical. They're identical means they're somewhat similar in terms of the population and all the variables which can influence the outcome. This has to be the first most important point if you decide to do fixed effect modeling. The studies, they have to be same. The studies, they have to be identical in terms of covariates which can influence the outcome. Second is your goal. The goal of a fixed effect modeling is not to generalize the results. The goal is to compute a common true effect size for the studies, okay, to find the common summary effect for whatever studies that are being included in the meta-analysis. But the goal is not to generalize to some other kind of a population, to some other group, subgroup, or some other situation or some other scenario which is not being included in the studies, okay. So these are the two points you should meet when you decide to do fixed effect modeling. When you decide to do random effect modeling, when do you decide? First condition is that the study should differ in population or variables which affect the outcome of the study. So unlike in fixed effect modeling where you need the studies to be identical in terms of covariates, if you are expecting that the studies are not identical in terms of these covariates, then you would move towards random effect modeling. And the goal of random effect modeling, as you can understand, it is also different. It is not to compute a common true effect, but to compute a mean of the common true effects, right? Because of this reason, the goal of a random effect modeling is more generalization, okay. The goal is to generalize from some 5, 10, whatever 20, 40 studies you have. The goal is to generalize to a larger group to a range of scenarios, okay. So the goal of a random effect modeling is to generalize, but the goal of a fixed effect modeling is to find the common true effect size. You should go for fixed effect modeling when the studies are somewhat like you have a reason to believe that they're identical in terms of covariates. If you have a reason to believe that the studies are not identical in terms of covariates and there is a huge variation, there is a lot of heterogeneity, then you will go for random effect modeling. So one example I can give you of a rare scenario. Mostly we go for random effect modeling, but this is one possible scenario where fixed effect modeling might work. So let's say you have a pharma company and they have done so many number of trials, maybe 10-20 trials of a single drug they have done, and each trial consists of maybe 100 or 200 patients, right? So all these trials, they have been done in the same kind of population. Let's assume Caucasian population. You have a same drug, you have the same dose, and the variables that can have impact on the outcomes, they are also same across all the studies. Okay, so maybe it's a SSRI and the depression is mild to moderate to severe, the age group is similar, the population type, the ethnic group is similar, the dose of the drug is similar. So generally speaking, this is what happens when a number of series of trials are done. They are done usually with the same study design and the variables are usually same. So in this scenario, it may make sense to believe that these studies are same, they are functionally same, and the variables are also same across all these studies, right? So all these studies are expected to share a common effect, right? We are expecting that the studies are similar, the studies are functionally similar, and they may share a common effect. And in this case, our goal is not to generalize, right? We don't want to find out the effect size in some different population. We want to find the effect size in the same population only, with the same drug, with the same dose. So the goal is not generalization, but the goal is to find the common true effect of these studies. So the goal of the analysis is to see if the drug works in this population only, from which the patients were drawn, and not to extrapolate to some other population. So the goal is not to generalize, but the goal is to find the true effect in the same population only. And so both the conditions are being met in this case. These studies are identical, and the goal is not to generalize, but the goal is to find the common true effect for this population only, from which the samples were drawn. In this case, it may make sense to go for fixed effect modeling. Okay, but mostly speaking, when you are collecting studies from literature, mostly the studies will have a lot of heterogeneity, and mostly the studies will have different patient population group, or some variables will be different. Okay, so in that case, it is random effect modeling is more plausible in most of the cases. Now we come to one problem that we encounter when we decide to do random effect modeling. As I've told you that in random effect modeling, within study variance is important, but also we have to account for between study variance, right? And I told you this within study variance will approximate 0 when the sample size approaches infinity. But the between study variance, to minimize this between study variance, you need a lot of studies. It will approach 0 only when the number of studies, k, when the number of studies approaches infinity. Okay, so let's say you want to do a random effect modeling and you have only 3 studies or 4 studies. The number of studies is very less. In that case, you will expect that the tau square will be huge. The tau square will be very high. So that is the between study variance, right? And between study variance, the second part of the equation will be very high. So the summary effect that you get, it will have a huge confidence interval, or you can simply say that the summary effect that you're generating is very imprecise. It is having very poor precision. So that is one problem that we encounter when we try to do random effect modeling with very few studies. This will not having a very few number of studies will not have an impact on fixed effect modeling, because in fixed effect modeling, the only thing that's important is the sample size of each individual study, because in fixed effect modeling we don't have to account for between study variance. So the number of studies is not important in case of fixed effect modeling as much it is important in random effect modeling. If you have less number of studies, then the summary effect will most definitely will have a huge confidence interval in case of random effect modeling. So what you can do in these cases, according to this book, you have 3 options. First is you don't generate a summary effect altogether, because the summary effect will have a huge confidence interval and the summary effect will be very imprecise. So you can just report the individual effect size for each of the studies, and you don't have to report a common summary effect. But the problem with this approach will be that because there is no common summary effect, so people may revert to vote counting, and so it will almost be like doing a narrative review of sort, because people may just count the number of studies which have a significant result, so they may revert to vote counting, and this may cause erroneous conclusion, right? It will be almost equivalent to doing a narrative review. Second option you have is, of course, to perform a fixed effect model, because in fixed effect model the number of studies they doesn't have it does not contribute to the variance, right? But the problem is that we went with random effect modeling in the first place because we wanted to generalize. We went with random effect modeling because we were expecting that the effect size they vary across our distribution. So there was a rationale to go for random effect modeling, right? So this approach may also not be correct, right? So the problem with this approach is we do want to make inference about a wider population. We wanted to generalize, now we cannot generalize because we have gone for fixed effect modeling, and readers will make these inferences even if they are not warranted. So the purpose of doing the meta-analysis is not solved. Basically your goal was to generalize, and now you cannot generalize because you have reverted to fixed effect model. The third option is to take a Bayesian approach, and in this approach, to calculate tau square, you will not only use the current set of studies, because you have very less studies. So to calculate this tau square or between study variance, you will use the data from previous studies also outside your current set of studies, and this is probably the best approach. That would be the Bayesian approach. So just remember, in case of random effect modeling, which has very few studies, too few studies are there, performing a Bayesian meta-analysis where the tau square or between study variance is calculated from data outside the current studies, that is probably the best approach. So if number of studies is too less, tau square, that is between study variance, will be too high, and the summary effect will have poor precision. So that is the problem we encounter when we try to do random effect modeling with too few studies. Another point to remember is that if you are doing fixed or random effect modeling, you should not look. People sometimes they go for first a test of heterogeneity and then they decide whether they should go for fixed or random effect modeling. Now that is a problematic approach. So the decision to perform a fixed or random effect modeling, as I've already told you, it should be based on your expectations about the distribution of the effect size as well as your goal of the study. So if your goal is to generalize and you are expecting that the effect sizes are varying, they vary across the studies, then you should go for random effect modeling. Otherwise your goal is not to generalize, and you are expecting all the studies are similar functionally, then you go for fixed effect modeling. So it should be based on your expectations and understanding of the distribution of effect size and not some test of heterogeneity. Okay, so some people adopt the practice of using, first they would go for fixed effect modeling, they would perform test for heterogeneity. If the test for heterogeneity is significant, they would switch over to random effect modeling, and I'll tell you why this is problematic. This is problematic because the test for heterogeneity has very low power. So let's assume a person, they first decided to go for fixed effect modeling and then they performed the test for heterogeneity. Okay, if the test for heterogeneity came positive, they thought, okay, maybe there is too much heterogeneity, I'll switch over to random effect modeling. This may be fine, okay, it's possible, and it is recommended that if you do fixed effect modeling and test for heterogeneity is significant, then you should reconsider your assumptions. But it is also possible that the test for heterogeneity may come negative because this test does not have enough power. It's a very low power test. So it's possible if you perform test for heterogeneity, it may be falsely negative in a way, and in that case you will continue with fixed effect modeling, and that is problematic. That is not right, because it is possible to have a lot of between study variance despite the fact that test for heterogeneity is non-significant. I hope I'm making sense. So this approach, this algorithm, like going like this, is problematic. Test for heterogeneity is not reliable. Basically it is a very low power test, and it can be falsely negative also. Just remember, it has a high false negative rate because of its low power. So you cannot rely on this test to tell you whether there is heterogeneity or not. Okay, so don't go for this approach. So your decision should be based on your understanding of the distribution of the effect size. That is the most important point. So I'll tell you one simple algorithm. so this is the test for heterogeneity. The null hypothesis is that the t tau square is 0, and as I've told you, it is a very low power test. So this is what you should do. First, think which model better fits your expectation about the distribution of the effect size and the goal of the study, whether your goal is to generalize or to find the common true effect, and what kind of distribution you are expecting. Are you thinking that the studies are functionally similar, or you are looking at the studies and you can see that the variables are varying? So based on your understanding, first decide whether it's you should go for random or fixed effect model. Okay, now you're doing random effect modeling. Let's say you perform tests for heterogeneity and it comes as significant. What you should do? Of course, you should continue with random effect modeling. The test for heterogeneity is further confirming that there is heterogeneity. There is a lot of between study variance. There is a lot of tau square, means the studies are functionally different. It makes sense to continue with random effect modeling. Let's say the test for heterogeneity does not come significant. Should it mean we should switch over to fixed effect modeling? No. As I've told you before, test for heterogeneity is not reliable. It has low power and it can come false negative also. So this test is not reliable. Even if it is negative, you cannot assume that there is no heterogeneity. You can see yourself the studies are functionally different, right? So don't look at this. Still you have to continue with random effect modeling. So basically the test for heterogeneity is not important, right? That is the point. Test for heterogeneity is not important whilst deciding which modeling to perform, right? Now let's say you thought, okay, the studies are functionally looking similar and my goal is to compute a common effect. I'll go for fixed effect modeling. Let's say you want to go for fixed effect modeling. Now you do a test for heterogeneity and it comes as significant. What you should do? You should revisit your assumptions. You should rethink about changing maybe perhaps this modeling, because test for heterogeneity is indicating that there is between study variance, right? There is between study variance and the studies may not be, it is possible that studies may not be functionally similar. So it may be appropriate to revisit your assumptions, why you chose fixed effect modeling. And let's say you're doing fixed effect modeling and test for heterogeneity is non-significant. What you should do? Of course, test for heterogeneity is non-significant. It means that there is no less heterogeneity, although this is still not reliable, but you can continue with fixed effect modeling as long as your assumptions about why you went for fixed effect modeling in the first place were correct. So the point is that this point you can remember, that if you are doing fixed effect modeling and the test for heterogeneity is coming as significant, then you should revisit your assumptions about fixed effect modeling, because it is indicating that there is heterogeneity and maybe fixed effect modeling may not be correct. Okay, so ultimately the selection of the model must be dependent on the question which model better fits the distribution of the effect size. Generally speaking, the random effect modeling is more plausible. See, one more reason why random effect modeling is better match is, even if you do random effect modeling, let's say I am doing a random effect modeling, let's say there is tau is 0, okay, let's say there is no between study variance. So what if, even if you do random effect modeling, the calculation and everything, the result will be exactly same as fixed effect modeling when tau square is 0, right? If tau square is 0, if you do random effect modeling, it's still fine, because it will basically reduce to fixed effect modeling only when tau square is 0. So there is no harm as such in doing random effect modeling. Okay, I hope this makes sense. If tau square between study variance is 0 and you still perform random effect modeling, you still do random effect modeling even if there is no between study variance, so what, it will basically be the same as doing fixed effect modeling only. So there is no harm in doing random effect modeling. Okay, so remember this, if the tau square turns out to be 0, then random effect analysis reduces to fixed effect analysis and there is no cost to using this model. You don't lose anything per se. But let's say you do the reverse. Let's say tau square is huge and you're doing fixed effect modeling, then that is a problem, right?